Orchestrated memoir narrative with verified character names and emotional story arc. Orchestrated memoir narrative with verified character names and emotional story arc. The day my daughter asked me to sign over the house, she brought a casserole. Tuna noodle. The kind I used to make for her when she was small and homesick from school. She set it on my counter, still warm in its glass dish. And I remember thinking how thoughtful that was, how I'd raised a good girl after all. I didn't understand yet that the casserole was the setup. That's how it works when the people you trust the most decide to take something from you. They don't kick the door down. They knock softly and they bring you something warm, and they smile while they reach into your life with both hands. I'm 71 years old. I've buried a husband, a sister, and more friends than I care to count. I have arthritis in my left hand and a hip that tells me when it's going to rain. I tell you all this not for sympathy, but so you understand the kind of woman I am. I am not fragile, I am not confused. And for a long stretch of last year, the people closest to me bet everything on the idea that I was both. Let me go back to the beginning of it, because the beginning matters. My husband, Walter, passed 4 years ago this spring. Finally, after we'd spent a decade dodging it with pills and walks and a low-salt diet that he hated and cheated on every chance he got, we were married 43 years. He was a quiet man, a foreman at a plant that made truck parts, and he believed in two things above all else: that you paid your bills on the first of the month and that you never, ever borrowed against your own roof. A paid-off house is the difference between a guest and a beggar, he used to say. He paid that mortgage off the year he turned 60, and I remember he stood in the front yard and looked up at the place like it was a person he'd been arguing with for 30 years and had finally beaten. That house. 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, a backyard with a maple Walter planted the summer our daughter was born. By the time he died, it was worth more than we ever paid for it. The way these things go, our little corner of Ohio had filled up with people who worked in the city and wanted a yard. And suddenly, the modest house we'd raised a family in was sitting on a small fortune. I didn't think about it that way. To me, it was just home. The kitchen where I'd burned 1,000 dinners and saved 1,000 more. The hallway where we'd marked our daughter's height in pencil on the doorframe. Those little lines climbing up year after year until they stopped around the time she turned 15 and decided she was too old for it. My daughter is named Megan. She's my only child, and for most of her life, she was my whole heart. I won't pretend otherwise. When Walter and I lost a pregnancy before her and another after, we decided she would be enough, and she was. I drove her to ballet she had no talent for. I sat through band concerts where she played the clarinet a half beat behind everyone else. I co-signed her first car loan, and when she got married, I took the money Walter and I had set aside and put nearly all of it into a wedding that, looking back, was about twice as big as it needed to be. I'd do most of it again. A mother loves the way she loves. There's no arithmetic to it. Megan married a man named Brett. I want to be fair to him even now because I've had a year to cool down, and bitterness ages a person faster than grief does. Brett wasn't a monster. He was a salesman, the kind who could make you feel like the most interesting person in the room for exactly as long as he needed something from you. He sold something different every few years, medical equipment, then solar panels, then some financial product I never fully understood. There was always a big break coming. There was always a deal about to close. And there was always, somehow, less money in their house than there should have been for 2 people with good jobs and no children until later in life. They had my granddaughter, Tessa, when Megan was 36. And Tessa, well, I have to be careful here, because if I start on Tessa, this whole story turns into the wrong story. She's 9 now. She has Walter's stubborn chin and a gap between her front teeth and a way of climbing into my lap and going completely still, like a cat that's decided you'll do. I would have walked into traffic for that child. They knew that. That was part of it too. The trouble started about a year and a half after Walter died, though I didn't recognize it as trouble at the time. Megan started coming around more. At first, I was grateful. The first year of widowhood is a long, gray tunnel, and the loneliness has a physical weight to it, like a wet coat you can't take off. So when my daughter started showing up on Sunday afternoons with Tessa, I welcomed it the way you'd welcome the sun after a month of rain. But the visits had a rhythm to them I should have caught sooner. She'd ask how I was sleeping. She'd ask if the stairs were bothering my hip. She'd look around the house. Really look, in a way that I read as concern at the time and understand now was an appraisal. "It's a lot of house for one person, Mom," she'd say, folding a dish towel that didn't need folding. "Don't you feel like it's just too much?" And I'd say no. Because it wasn't. I had a woman come clean once a month. I did my own cooking and my own garden, and I drove myself to church and the grocery store and the doctor. I was fine. More than fine. But every visit chipped at that a little. "You forgot you told me that already, Mom. Are you sure you took your pills today?" Small things. The kind of thing any of us forgets at any age. But she was building a file. I see that now. She was collecting evidence, even if she never wrote a word of it down, for a case she intended to make. The casserole day was a Saturday in October. The leaves were down. I remember because I'd been raking, and my hip was singing, and I'd just come in and put the kettle on when her car pulled into the drive. She came in alone, no Tessa, and that should have told me something. She set the casserole down and made small talk while the kettle climbed toward a whistle, and then she sat me down at my own kitchen table like she was the host, and I was the guest, and she said she'd been doing some thinking. "Brett and I have been talking," she said. "We're worried about you, Mom, out here all by yourself." I told her I appreciated it, but I was managing. "That's just it," she said. "You're managing now, but what about in 5 years? 10? Mom, this house is going to become a burden. The taxes alone. And if something happens, if you fall, God forbid, but if you fall and you're in here alone, who's going to know?" I'll admit, it landed, because it's a real fear. The fear of being old and alone and on the floor with a broken hip and no one coming. I'd had it myself, lying awake at 3 in the morning. She knew that. Of course she knew that. She'd grown up in that house. She knew where my soft spots were the way you know where the squeaky stair is. Then she got to it. The plan, she explained, was simple, and it was for my own good. She said that phrase 3 or 4 times, "for your own good," and each time it set my teeth a little more on edge, though I didn't yet know why. The plan was that I would deed the house over to her and Brett. Not sell it, just put it in their names. That way, she said, when I eventually needed care, the state couldn't come and take the house to pay for a nursing home. It's called estate planning, Mom. Everyone does it. We're protecting the asset for the family. For Tessa. For Tessa. There it was. She'd waited until the end to play that card, and she played it well. I'd keep living there, she assured me. Nothing would change day to day. It was just paperwork. Just protecting the family's future. And Brett knew a lawyer who could draw it all up cheap as a favor. I told her I'd think about it. That's all I said. I'd think about it. And she smiled and hugged me and told me she loved me, and she left the casserole and she drove away. I sat at that table until the tea went cold, and I want to tell you I saw through it right then, but I didn't. Not fully. What I felt was a kind of unease I couldn't name, a wrongness, like a picture hung slightly crooked. My daughter loved me. That was the fact I built everything on. So if my daughter was asking me to do this, it must be because she was looking out for me. That's the trap, you see. That's the whole trap. They count on your love for them to do the work that would otherwise require a lie. But Walter's voice was in my head too. A paid-off house is the difference between a guest and a. The taillights are what I keep coming back to. Watching my daughter's car back out of the driveway that night, I understood that every single thing that happened flowed from a choice I made at a kitchen table. Not the choice to refuse her, but the choice, days earlier, to walk down the street with a coffee cake and ask Wanda one honest question instead of letting my love for Megan answer it for me. That's the whole hinge of it. The casserole didn't cost me my house. My willingness to pause and find out the truth saved it. I've thought a lot about why Megan ended up where she ended up, and I don't believe she was born to do what she did. I think she let her fear of money quietly rot the part of her that knew right from wrong, until she could look at her widowed mother and see a deed instead of a person. That's the thing about character. It doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes one small permission at a time, it's practically ours anyway at a time, until you're bringing your own mother dinner as a down payment on her home. Brett didn't corrupt her. He just gave her excuses and she took them because taking them was easier than staying honest. Cause and effect. You feed the wrong thing in yourself long enough, it grows. What kept me upright wasn't that I was clever. It was that I was willing to do the uncomfortable thing. Sit in a lawyer's office and ask, straight out, am I being robbed? And then sit with the answer even when the answer broke my heart. Knowing the right thing meant nothing until I had the backbone to act on it at my own dinner table, with my granddaughter in the next room and my daughter crying real tears across from me. Doing right is rarely the warm choice. It's usually the cold, lonely 3 a.m. choice, and you have to be strong enough to make it anyway. So if you take one thing from an old woman, take this. Stay decent. Keep loving the people who disappoint you. Because bitterness ages you faster than grief. But pair that decency with clear eyes, the willingness to see a thing for what it actually is, even when it's wearing a costume you'd rather not unmask. And then have the nerve to stand on what you see. Goodness without sense gets you robbed. Sense without courage gets you nowhere. You need all three, working together. The way I needed all three on the night I set out the good china and told the truth. Megan comes over on Sundays again. We're more honest now than we ever were when everything was easy. And the deed is still in my name, the way Walter left it. That's not a victory I gloat over. It's just the quiet proof that the roof you keep over your own head is worth more than the comfortable lie that you'll never need it.